Oh, it says an error occurred with your guest's destination.
Oh, 1 second. Remove. Basically, I used to stream it to Twitter, and it should be all good now.
Hello, Neil. How are you doing?
I'm good, mate. Good after a win, but also great to have your own channel. It's really good to see. And I won't say I've been telling you for a while, but I've kind of left it. But I'm really glad to see that you finally created one.
Thank you very much. Well, I feel like Luke Skywalker to Obi-Wan Neil today. But hello, everyone, and welcome to the instant match reaction. It's Leicester City 4, Tranmere Rovers nil. I'm joined by the legendary Neil from Beyond the 90. Thank you, and welcome to the show. Neil, I feel like the shoe's on the other foot, but you know what? It's always great to speak to you after a win. How are you feeling after seeing the man, the myth, the legend, Jordan Ayew? Are you not entertained?
I'm very entertained. It was a pretty entertaining game. Well, to be fair, even the second half, there was elements of Enzo ball going on in there in terms of possessions. Jordan Ayew was coming into this game. I was thinking, 8 million's a lot to pay for a player. Is he kind of finished? You see him in terms of like fancy football, so he's kind of okay stats with low price. And you can see here again. Yes, it was against a lower opposition, but I thought he was great. And again, what was really important for me is it's a confidence builder. And yes, we haven't had that for the last couple of games, especially. Well, I didn't watch the Fulham game, but this is a good step up and see, look, we believe in the manager. We know it's going to work. Yes, it was against the League Two opposition, but I think there's plenty of positives to take to go, look, we're not going completely away from the way that we used to play. It just depends on the opposition in regards to, like, for example, the Enzo ball.
Totally agree with you. Well, I tell you what, if there's ever a day that I'm not happy with 4-0, you have permission to shoot me dead on the spot. I will take that all day, every day. Especially, I have to say a little anecdote, but I was at the cup final many years ago when we beat Tranmere with a Matt Elliott double. So absolutely love the kind of nostalgia.
Was the goalkeeper playing?
Yes, we'll come to that. Okay, he's actually the first player we're going to talk about because I think he deserves so much respect. But let's go through the match then. So I've got the post-match stats here already. So yeah, we won 4-0, 71% ball possession. I mean, this really was, I guess, what you'd expect from a Premier League team against a team that's 12th in League Two. Huge disparity between the two team places, the values of the squad. But regardless of that, absolutely brilliant display. 22 shots, 5 big chances, scored 4. Their goalkeeper had to pull off 4 saves. We had 9 corners, all these passes, domination really from start to finish. Might have taken us a bit of a while before we got the goal, but we got it, and it was pretty routine thereafter. I thought I would show you this. So this is the match ratings. I'm sure we'll have our own opinion in a moment. But I always used to like to use SofaScore just because it's fairly objective. They're always going to be looking at things like number of times possession won, lost, assists, tackles, all that stuff. So whilst it's not the be all and end all, I think it's pretty accurate. And unsurprisingly, it's high ratings from pretty much everyone. I think unsurprisingly, you've got Danny Ward and Caleb Aoli, and that's mainly because they didn't touch the ball. We will talk about maybe Aoli in a little bit, but a great display from everyone. We're going to come through some of the players in just a moment, but we can see that Ricardo Pereira returning into the team and captain, 8.7 rating. Harry Winks, the main man from last season, 8.7 rating as well. And Jordan Ayew, I guess that's what happens when you score an absolute thunder rocket. A great score from him. And also, one thing I didn't realise is Nigel Adkins is their manager. That's a blast from the past. He did really well with Southampton, getting them to the Premier League, and then lost his job for Pochettino. I'm surprised he's so far down the pyramid because, he got a team to the Premier League, but interesting to see he's still around.
Such is the nature of the game as well. You can come and you can go just as quick.
Absolutely. Well, here I've got the lineup, and this was not our formation, but it kind of felt like this. So there were quite a few changes with the lineup. Danny Ward was in goal instead of Mads Manson. But the main kind of stories, I guess, was Ricardo back to the team and given the captain's armband. Aoli making his kind of competitive debut for Leicester. Wout Faes on the right side of the defence. I've heard, I don't know about but he doesn't like being played on the left, is what they're saying. So he was playing on the right-hand side. We had Luke Thomas, but Luke Thomas was pushing up. Maybe he wasn't pushing up as high as Ricardo, but essentially we only had to have 2 men back, if even 2, sometimes even fast move forward. Harry Winks in the team, joined by Oliver Skipp. That's something that I think shows us what the future of the team is. And in fact, I think actually, for me, the big talking point really is that you've got Winks, Skipp and Ndidi in the team as this kind of triangle. And I think that is going to be the triangle to our play going forwards, because I think it gives you sort of a lot of bite and tenacity in midfield. Stephy Maddison also returning to the starting lineup. Casey McAteer, Jordan Ayew. Sorry, I cut you off there. What did you want to say there?
It's all good. I think you're right to a certain extent. I think for certain teams coming probably into this, so I'll probably get into it in a second, but you're right. For certain teams, we're going to be able to play with a cam. In this case, Wolford and Ndidi is put into a position where at times in the first half, he didn't look as comfortable, and then he grew into the game, I think, throughout. However, this 3, I think, is going to be used, especially when we're trying to soak up pressure, soak up the play a 3 that's going to be quite solid. We'll get into some of the specifics, but I think this will be a formation we can go to. However, coming into the second half, I think where we've got Buonanotte and another player we're going to come into, it looks like he's signed. He's going to come in the next couple of days. We can change it up. And you remember how Brendan used to play specifically against Man City, where he'd keep back 5 or keep a back 3 midfield and go, right, last 20 minutes, let's go for them. And that you bring on the attacking midfielder. I think I've got a feeling that he's going to do that more. And I think the crowd will get really behind that.
Definitely possible. Well, I was going to say that when we were pressing from the front, it was Jordan Ayew was joined by Wolford and Ndidi in this game. So he really pushed up high. Just want to say, guys, thank you so much for all the comments coming in. A lot of talk about Bilal El Khanous. We've got a little special section on there. Don't you worry. We're going to talk about him towards the end of the show. I think we're all excited to see him. But let's go through the game. It's not often we win 4-0. Wouldn't be surprised if it's the biggest win of the season, just given how difficult it is. So yeah, this is how we lined up. Jordan Ayew playing up top, I guess, is that's one of the talks. Is are we going to sign another striker? Maybe we've already signed one. We'll talk about him in a moment. Just before we talk about our players, you mentioned it, Neil, but I want to give this guy so much respect. This is actually unbelievable. So Joe Murphy, the goalkeeper for Tranmere, he played in 2000 in the League Cup final. I was there. I think I was 12 years old at the time, maybe younger. I can't remember. But I do remember that day. And he played today as well at age 43. He's had, I think, 7 or 8 clubs in the meantime. But he was really good as well. I have nothing but respect for someone like that, because you could retire so easily and to still have a love for the game and play that, especially when you know it's going to be a tough evening. Just got to give him props. Don't know about you, know, that's an incredible achievement.
It's just something to note and go, this is kind of the romance side of football. When people go and they go, why do you watch football? Or people that don't understand football go, but why are you watching this? You're losing 3-0. Just go, no, you've got to stay. And this is where we talk about, again, the romance side of it. And I think this is why this kind of is a great example of not just a trivia question that will come up in super geeks, but at the same time, it's something that you go, yeah, do you know what? Football is great sometimes for these kind of stories.
100%. We've actually got Minimal Spark here, who's a Tranmere supporter. So big respect to you. And big respect to Joe Murphy. And look, if he's 43, Jamie Vardy, I hope you're not planning on hanging up those boots. You've got 6 years left, mate. We expect to see you at the King Power in another World Cup's time, if you ask me. We'll talk about a little bit about Tranmere in a second, but I'm going to go through all of the Leicester players. So yeah, look, I want to touch on Wolford and Ndidi. Or I thought that this was Yaya Toure, to be honest with you. I thought he was absolutely outstanding. And, you know, something that I see labelled a lot, and I understand why, is that when Ndidi's playing high up the pitch, he's not creative and he's not the best on the ball. And I really think that that's quite unfair. Yeah, look, for sure, he hasn't got the touch of a Kevin De Bruyne or a Lionel Messi, but he really showed some nice touches in this game, including for his goal, which was fabulous. But he is creative in a totally different aspect, and that is that he just wins the ball back so often that it just means you're always on the front foot. And I think him and Jordan Ayew up front, what they might lack in technical quality, I mean, if you keep getting the ball back, you're going to keep making chances. We had 20-odd chances. So I was extremely impressed with Wolford and Ndidi today. But how about you, Neil? What did you make of him?
I think he's in general. We started the game off a little bit slow and a little bit, and I think he grew into the game, and it reminded me again. I think I've titled it on my stream, which is it reminded me a bit of Enzo ball, where we got the best out of Wolford and Didi going forward. I think he was great. I think it's what I thought Chowdhury was going to be, closing down from the front, giving all the legs. And at times it looks like the ball's getting away from him, but he managed to find a way to kind of like get the ball, get it under control. Some of his first touching was really impressive in this game. And
he
that's
did
something
lots of
that,
little layoffs, didn't he? And one touches. I
yeah,
think that's why I'm saying I think it's unfair when people say that he's bad on the ball. Like he's not. I think playing out from under pressure, that's a bit different. That's where someone's asked there, how did Oliver Skipp play? That you can definitely see the difference between him. Like Skipp, if there's three people around him, he doesn't panic and he's good at nicking his way out, as is Harry Winks. Indeed, if he's in that situation, I wouldn't say he panics, but I would bet on the other team getting the ball back, put it that way. But I feel like when Ndidi's got a bit more time on the ball, he is a lot better than people give him credit for. And I think he's actually been one of the best players for us this season so far.
But at the same time, with a League Two opposition, you can get away with it. Premier League, when you promote to Premier League, like, and I'm probably spoiling it a little bit ahead, but for the fourth goal with Harry Winks, a great example, brilliant, great strike. He's not going to be able to get that space in the Premier League. They're not going to give you that time. And that's take nothing away because you can only play with who's in front of you. But elements of that won't be available in the Premier League because, again, the opportunities in even in the Championship, you create a lot more opportunities and you're going to score a lot more. And this is a great example. Yes, it's League Two, but the similar kind of traits to last season.
Fair enough. I think I still would say it's a little bit of a skepticism towards Ndidi. For me, I'm calling him Wilfred Toure. That's how I move. Well, we've got to move on to this guy. I think there was more than a few eyebrows raised with the signing of Jordan Ayew from Crystal Palace, 32 years old, something like 5 to 8 million paid for him. Today, though, I mean, you're looking for someone to break the deadlock against a team that's playing a super deep block. You're being frustrated. Well, one way to do it, Neil, is to just absolutely thundercunt it in from 25 yards out and say, have some of that. What did you make of Jordan Ayew?
I thought it was brilliant. I thought not just his position again. We'll get onto the goal in a second. I think his ability to push back, to bring others into play, which I think is desperately missing, and especially if you're playing this three in midfield. He got other players into play, and he was getting some really good 1-2s with Wolford and Didi. And it's something that I've seen previously with, I want to say, Kelechi and Acho, where they've played really nicely 1-2 off each other. We didn't see it that much last year, but he's got the ability to go forward, drive, and just go, do you know what? I'm going to hit it out of nowhere. And that wasn't just for the goal. I think he did it in about 18 or so minutes around that position. And the crowd just appreciated the fact that, look, we're not trying to play this perfect opportunity. I've got a good shot. I'm in a good position. And the ball was spinning in all different sides directions. And the goalkeeper wasn't sure where it was going. So he's not afraid to have an opportunity if the space is around. I think that's something that I wouldn't say we've missed it, but seeing it going, okay, that's something different that we've not had before.
He had a goal. He had an assist, 5 ground duels, one of 2 of them, 83% passing accuracy, 1 key pass, a cross, long balls, 1 dribble attempt successful. Of the 2 shots, they were both on target. One of them went in. I think it was a very solid performance. Now, for sure, it's just Tranmere Rovers, so let's not get carried away. So far, seems like a reasonable signing. I think still the elephant in the room, though, is that are we going into this season then with Jamie Vardy and Jordan Ayew as our strikers, with maybe Patson Daka coming back later? I got a feeling that will be the case, in which case the jury might still be out. But I think you got to give someone their respect where it's due, and he had a very good game today. Mm-hmm. Okay, let's talk about another new boy. He, this time from the start, just like Jordan Ayew. So Oliver Skipp comes into the team, Skippy, as he's going to be affectionately known from here on out. And he was playing next to Harry Winks. What did you make of Ollie Skipp?
I'm going to give this one back to you. The reason why is because I was traveling back. I was watching it on my phone and I didn't manage to get the analysis in that. So I didn't really I wasn't really targeting him as much when I was looking. I thought he looked solid, but I don't have too much more analysis than that.
Well, I think you still pretty much nailed it on. This was one of those games where someone like him doesn't really need to be in the game too much. In fact, I'd actually argue that, playing him, Winks, and Ndidi against opposition like Tranmere was a bit silly, because you probably want someone who can unlock the door rather than having a more attritional player. That said, I think Skipp, to give him some respect, he did have some nice touches. He actually almost scored. He had a nice interchange of Ndidi, and then he tried to chip the keeper. Keeper made a good save. As we mentioned, Joe Murphy had a good game there. But he showed it. He's got some technique and talent. I think in a game like this, he was rarely under pressure, so you didn't really see too much of him having to turn out of trouble. But him and Winks, what I'd say is circulation. That they were brilliant at. The ball kept circulating the whole time. And something I think I will give Steve Cooper a lot of props for is that you mentioned it, and I agreed that the first half was a bit slow, but I noticed that definitely around the sort of 20 to 25-minute mark, Leicester, all of a sudden, the pace of the passing increased dramatically. And whereas before it was slow and lethargic, although sometimes we gave it away, all of a sudden it started pinging much faster. And when that happened, then suddenly the chances started arriving. Like Fass had a driving run and almost scored. Ayew tested the keeper. I think Ndidi almost got in. Skipp almost got in. And at that point in time, it just felt like, okay, now they're just clinging on. And of course, you still had in the back of your mind, though, is it going to be one of those nights where you have like 35 shots and you don't score and it goes to penalties? But then once Ayew, broke down the dam, the floodgates had opened. So I think it was a solid performance. The real test is going to be against Villa at the weekend, where I suspect Skipp will play.
Yeah, I think you got a good point. And again, with that midfield that we were mentioning earlier, and one thing I also want to mention, there was a couple of people. There's that one person that I was saying this needs to be quicker, and that was Jordan Ayew. He was the one visibly saying to people,
Yeah.
"Look, this isn't quick enough. We need to make sure this is quicker." And it was just in this kind of motion. And I saw that, and I thought, "Oh, that's interesting." I think it was mentioned on commentary as well, that I was watching. So yeah, so he was He was. I wouldn't say it was him. Obviously, it was the manager, and it was, again, a lot of these players coming into the team haven't played with each other that many minutes. Luke Thomas, Aoli's first start, again, first start for Ayew and Skipp as well, as you're mentioning. So it is going to take a while, even if it is a League Two position, to really gel. And in the first 20 minutes you mentioned, yeah, I'm with you that it totally makes sense. But another thing to mention, the defense didn't look solid. And as the game progressed, it built in confidence and it started to really come together more as a unit rather than four individuals.
Absolutely. He actually had 96 passing accuracy, Ollie Skipp. Probably wasn't too tested, to be honest. Okay, coming back to someone who's a contender for man of the match, the return of Ricardo Pereira. He played at right back, but was bombing so far forwards. Well, he won a penalty. That kind of shows you everything you need to know. That this is a player I feel extremely fond of. If it was me, he'd always be in the starting 11. I think he's one of the best players we have in the entire squad. But what did you make of his performance today?
Great performance. In the first, again, I think like everybody, in the first 20 minutes, trying to find his feet. And then so there was a couple of things that really stood out to me, I think, for the first 20 or so minutes. I think it's important to mention there. Everything was going down that left-hand side to Mavididi. Can he create something? Can he try and work something? And he kept going at the defenders, and it wasn't working for large part for the beginning part of the game, but he beat it into the ground. He beat them because he was like, God, it's going to be like this all game. And after 20 minutes, you saw that Ricardo started to push on and bomb on like that, playing that kind of like a traditional fullback role, coming in, whipping a ball in, or providing where Fass was coming up with him. And he was playing that creative role where Casey McAteer was moving inside, he was moving to the outside. And again, it showed that we all know you can kind of put Ricardo anywhere on the pitch and he will thrive. And I thought he was a great example of that. And if it's coming into this, I mean, looking at this performance today, if you're Steve Cooper, I think you have to play him, especially with what happened with JJ. And I think it wasn't all his fault. And it's not fair to be completely dropped, but he has to be a big consideration. And I think he mentioned in his review, he said we've had conversations with Ricardo, and he's patient and biding his time. But I'm with you. I think he deserves to be in the team because he offers you that going forward, and especially with somebody like Skipp in the team that's got that physicality, which probably Ricardo would lack. I think that's an area that I think that with Skipp in that team, I think we can really do some good work.
Just bringing this up, this is pretty ridiculous. These are some of his stats. You can see the area of the pitch that he operated in. Is that his score has actually been upgraded to 8.9 here. 2 clearances, 2 interceptions, 1 tackle. But look at this for his duels. This is always, I feel, something that's extremely underrated about Ricardo's game. I remember in the 2019 season where, just before COVID hit, we were 3rd in the league. And indeed, he had the most tackles in the league. But the 3rd best player in the league was Ricardo. So look how many ground duels he won, but look how many aerial duels he won. For someone who's not a 6-footer, it's extremely impressive. 103 touches, 90% passing accuracy, 6 key passes. I think that's the most in the entire team. 2 dribble attempts, 2 of which were successful, and winning a penalty. I mean, the guy absolutely cooks. There's no other way of saying it. Yeah, I mean, look, me and you are fans. Yeah.
Do you think that's enough for Steve Cooper to go, you know what, I've seen that. He's coming in the team. I don't think it is.
It's a tricky one because, to be fair, I think the reason why he selected Justin so far is that Justin is better defensively against wingers. But I don't know if you saw my post-match analysis show, just doing a little plug here. But for that, James Justin against Fulham didn't have the greatest game in the world, if I'm being honest. And I think he was definitely at fault for the second one where he jumps too fast. So I don't know. If I was going on form, I would put Ricky P in. But you're right. We'll have to see. I mean, I do want to say as well is that like a lot of eyebrows have been raised about signing both Bobby Reid and Jordan Ayew. Well, of those two, Jordan Ayew, I think even in the game that he came on, showed something and was very good tonight. Whereas Bobby Reid so far for me has disappointed. Doesn't mean that he can't be good in the future. I'm just calling it how I see it. So you know what? Let's see what happens when the game goes there. But yeah, look, I think you're not the only one. Here we go. From Scott, Neil, I tend to agree with you. As good as Ricky P is, I just don't think he'll start on Saturday. I think we agree with you, Scott. I just kind of hope you're wrong. Sorry, mate.
I hope that we're wrong. I think, Neil, you're in the same boat as well. I think he deserves to start. But the duels element, I think, will be really vital against Aston Villa.
Yeah. Okay, well, let's move on to someone else who came back into the team and also had a pretty strong performance. Stephy Maddison. Scored the penalty, was causing havoc all throughout the game. What did you make of Stephy's performance?
Stephy was, I think I mentioned it, in the first 20 minutes or so, everything was coming through him. And he wasn't quite getting the joy that he usually does. But as the game progressed, especially in the second half, he wasn't just finding areas in the left of the pitch. He was also driving through the centre. Mm-hmm. And he was kind of going, well, where do I want to go? I'm going to go wherever I want. Kind of, he's got that kind of arrogance to him, which I really like. So he's going through the centre, he's going through the left, he's going through the right. Not through the right, through the centre and to the left. Really enjoyed the performance. This is where I think he plays his best football. When we've tried to play him as a striker, he works hard, but he does look a bit lost. Now we've got Ayew in the team. I appreciate that, Scott. Thank you. When we've got Jordan Ayew in the team, it kind of allows Steffi to kind of be in his natural home on that side, taking on the man, going left, going right. He had a couple of nice balls at his feet. He didn't quite finish off. But overall, I've been impressed with him. But it's kind of what we expected from last year, getting him into those right areas.
Absolutely. Just want to bring up here comment from Sports SA or Sports. This is a great channel as well. If you haven't subscribed to this, great content, another great content creator. Maybe we can collaborate in the future. Just throw that out there. Kind of alluding to some of the points you mentioned about Ayew being excellent, dropping in and linking the play, especially with Steffi. I've got to say, what I kind of respect about Steffi is I've just looked at the stats and he lost possession 17 times. Yet despite that, he still had a rating of 8.1. And I feel that, like, if you're a winger, you've got to have that attitude. You've got to be like, okay, my man's beaten me 4 times in a row, but I'm going to win the 5th one. I'm going to win the 6th one. You'll notice I'm wearing my Street Fighter t-shirt today. That's how I play Street Fighter. When I lose 10, I'm just thinking I'm going to win 11 in a row. It doesn't normally work out like that, I'll be honest, but sometimes it does. That's my thinking. So I respect and admire the fact that he kept going. And I think he had so many nice touches. He almost scored a really nice goal right at the end. That would have been for 5-0. I don't think he was being too selfish. I think he did look like a class above, and it did kind of feel that, like, he was always going to make the difference. It was just going to take him a bit of time. Admittedly, it's against League Two opposition even. Can he do it in the Premier League is still a bit, hard to say. But hopefully this is good for his confidence, because I think a confident and performing Stephy Maddison is something we need if we're going to stay up this season.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so a few people have been asking about this. Bringing up Ethan here. Couldn't watch the match. How did the Aoli and Skipp play? Well, we've mentioned a bit about Skipp. Kind of decent. You didn't really have to see him get much involved in the game. What did you make of the man from Atalanta and with a pineapple haircut? It's Caleb Ayew.
I thought his physicality was useful in the game. I don't think he did anything particularly amazing, which is fine, I think, for his first performance. But I thought he held his own. But I didn't really have, a little bit at times, but I don't think he had. I don't think it was too bad a performance.
Mm-hmm.
It did help that Tranmere didn't really offer anything going forward.
Yeah, I think overall he was decent. He mopped everything up. His physicality, he just dominated the opposition strikers easily, as you'd probably expect at this level. He looked taller, faster, stronger, wider, you name it. You're not going to get past him. I think his passing was generally good, but Brookline's just mentioned there, he did right at the end kind of give a giveaway, and Tranmere got in, and I think that was at 3-0, maybe it was 4-0, and there was their one shot on target that maybe they could have taken. But to be honest, if at that point in the game, of course it'd still be a blot against him, but it's not the biggest issue in the world. And whilst you want to keep your concentration, you can sort of understand why either him or Danny Ward, who aren't really involved, aren't making 100% successful sort of tackle. So he looked decent, but I think it's fair to say there's going to be many more sterner tests to come. But look, I think he's been put in. And yeah, look, I'll bring up a comment here from Slayer. He said generally had good passing and didn't look out of place at all. And I think that's what I would agree with. I think he looked like a solid addition to the team. Mm-hmm. Okay, let's move on to one of the many academy graduates that played, but this one started and played the entire game. He's the bundle and ball of energy himself. Casey McAteer, what did you make of good old Casey?
I think he was good. I think I lost track of him at times during the game, just because, again, he went a bit quiet, which is okay. Second half, like a lot of the team, he really stepped up, and his closing down was a lot stronger, which I really enjoyed. Some of the possessions, some of the football he was playing was really good. I think he needed to, though sometimes the link-up play wasn't quite on point, but his tenacity, he kept going, and I think there's a reason why the manager left him on for that period of time as well. He was taken off, I think, in the 81st minute or something for Fatau came on. Yeah, 82nd minute. But I think he did a decent job. For me, it was interesting to see, because sometimes he was drifting in wide. And I think he naturally wants to come into the centre position. And this will allow somebody like a Ricardo to come on the outside. If that link up could be there, I think you've got a really good player. And I think at times where Mavididi is more about, I'm going to take you on and I'm going to go for it. Casey will go, okay, I've got the ball. How do I get this into the area? He's not quite sure what is his next move. When Mavididi is going, I'm running at you and I'm going to make sure I'm going to get past you. Whether I fail or not, I'm going to keep doing the same thing. I think with Casey gets the ball in really good positions, he needs that extra support around him.
Yeah, do you think that's because, like, Mavididi is almost like the Jeremy Doku of the Leicester team, and that he's just going to run at you? Whereas is McAteer the Bernardo Silva? I'm being quite generous here, I admit, but do you know what I mean? Or do you think he's, because you say that you feel he feels lost. Do you feel he feels lost, or is he more of a thinking man? I don't want to put words in your mouth. Yeah. You think he's lost, you say that.
I'm with you. I don't think he's lost, but when he gets the ball, he's like, what do I do now? Mm-hmm. Where Mavididi's more, again, so for example, when I'm thinking in a Casey perspective, because I do the same thing when I'm playing football. I've got a position, what am I going to do now? And I'm looking, if there's a pass on, or if somebody's making a move, it takes the defender, what am I going to do in that position? And that gives me a rise to go, right, now I'm going to make my next move. It basically just needs a little bit of backup.
I get what you're saying. So, there's definitely a debate amongst the fan base of, like, is Casey McAteer good enough for the Premier League, or does he need to go to the Championship and have a season on loan before he comes back? And that's quite an interesting debate. I would say to you that if it was me and I was coaching the team, I would love to coach a player like Casey McAteer. And I can explain to you why. The guy is absolutely relentless. He is running up and down like a madman, right? If he does make a mistake, he tries his absolute hardest to put it right and is always supportive. I also feel, though, this is the real reason why I'd like to work with him, that he really listens to the instructions that he's been given and he follows them out almost to a T. And that means that, you can be quite predictable as to what you think he's going to do and how he's going to affect the game. I will agree that when he gets into certain positions, because he's inexperienced, he maybe either hasn't been coached what to do there, and that is sometimes the disadvantage of playing system football versus having to think about, what is the best option. Let me bring an interesting comment here. Casey gives me Ben Berriton Diaz vibes. Not a passer, not a dribbler, but a fantastic runner onto a through behind and a lethal finisher. And I don't think that's unfair to say that sort of thing. And I would say that Casey's a player that even to this day, it's like, what is his true position? I mean, he was even playing as an auxiliary left back at the weekend, coming on for Christensen, but we're just basically playing as a winger because we needed a goal. So he's been tried absolutely everywhere. And so I could see why people would say, well, if we load him to the Championship, let's say he played for a really solid team like a Norwich, a Bristol City, someone like that, plays every single game, builds up, gets a position down, he'll come back and he could be a way more polished article. Possibly true. But the thing is, with that energy and that tenacity, in a hard league like the Premier League, where physicality is huge and being able to press and being able to run, even if he's only playing 30 minutes a game, 20 minutes a game, 10 minutes a game, I could see why he'd want him in a team. And I have to say that all last season, I could understand why Enzo, every time he was asked about Casey McAteer, he had nothing but praise for him. He was always like, do you not see what this guy does off the ball? It's absolutely incredible. And that, football is not just on the ball, right? One of the reasons I made this channel is to look at what happens off the ball. There's some more interesting comments here. Do you think the fact that Casey makes such an effort up and down the pitch is something he's invited to do by fellow senior players like Ricky P? Interesting one, but I actually think he's just a try-hard, as stupid as that sounds. I mean, some people just have that about them, or how can I say this? You mentioned you play in the cages, Neil. I got to say, when I play, sadly for me, I'm not the best player, but I found out that you can make up for it with physicality. And it's like, if you run more than anyone on a pitch, there's no one on your team that won't appreciate that. And I even noticed personally, for example, say in the last 10 or 15 minutes of the game, I look pretty good just because everyone else is gassed and I'm not. But what do you think of him in that sort of capacity? And I'll just throw another comment up here as well. Someone else, Tyler's also gone, I think his best position is as a wide forward. So what do you think?
I think he could be interchanged with that, but I'm with you. I think the wide forward makes sense, but it's not an out-and-out winger. He's not coming out wide to cross the ball in. Somebody's get their heads on. That's why he kind of needs the backup in that position. Mm-hmm. But I think you're right. And again, it's something similar to when I play football. Again, I'm nowhere near it. As you mentioned, I'm pretty useless with it. But I give it a go. I'm running at the defenders, and also I get to the point and then I try and cross it in because I realise nobody's with me. And I think at times he just needs to, once they look up, he needs to just check other people around him to get the right position in. And yeah, I think you're right. And with that midfield that we've got, and if with the midfield we've got with Skipp, with Ndidi, with Winks, it's becoming, and Mavididi, he's going to play, got Casey McAteer, we're becoming a bit of a brute team to play against.
I think that's intentional. We've got some interesting comments.
Yeah.
The view from down under, I think Casey is quite physical for a winger. And then Slayer said he's a merge of an 8, a 10, and a 7, which makes him incredibly versatile. I agree with that. And it'd be interesting to see which one of those positions, if any of them, he picks if he is in position. And he needs a bit more belief in his dribbling.
I just think it's funny now we're merging like an 8. People, it just, you over attack you like a false 8, false 9, 10, 7, 8, 9, 8.5, 9.5.
Yeah, I'm a false 3.5 me, which is also my IQ.
It's also my shoe size.
Yeah. Well, I will say this. Last season, he wasn't on anyone's radar at all. I think after a couple of games, people were like, okay, Casey McAteer can become a solid championship player. I think he will become a Premier League player. For who and for how long, I don't know. But I think he's... the more I see him, the more I'm impressed with him. And I think that he's maybe... something for us all to look up to in the sense that it shows you what hard work and tenacity can get you. I'm a big believer in that. So, I don't know if you've ever read a documentary called Grit. But I'm a big believer of that one. All right, let's move on. And I just want to bring this one up because I think this is a really interesting comment. Richard,
23 this year.
Yeah. In all 3 games, we have started slow. This needs to change. Cooper problem will be the left-hand side for Saturday, which I must be watching the channel because that left-hand side is something I'm not too pleased about, even though it was much better in the game today. So today, we also had another academy graduate, Luke Thomas. Interesting, because I thought his career at Leicester might have been over, and I'm not sure he will still be here on transfer deadline day. But what did you make of his performance? For what it's worth, he got 8.1 today in the ratings.
That's surprising. When we've seen him in pre-season, he looks shot of confidence, shot of ability. He looked better in the game today, and I think he might just be quite a confidence player. There were some really good balls he did over to Mavididi, which I was really impressed with. His vision is more of a Christensen is more of a bomb on, give me the ball, I'm going to try and run and give you the backup. With Luke Thomas, I'm not going to go forward as much, but I'm going to try and play balls across the pitch over to the defender. For me, the problem with Luke Thomas is when he gets one-on-one with the defender, he looks absolutely scared. But in this game, where he didn't have a lot of pressure on him, where he played the good possession football, but the highlight for me was his balls over to Mavididi and just go, right, I'm going to try and set you away, which I thought was really impressive. I still am not sure if he's good enough for Premier League quality this season, if we're going to stay up. But yeah, I think he was better than I expected coming into the game.
Yeah, well, there you heard it on stream here first. Neil is a fan of Luke Thomas's balls. I didn't say it. We all heard it for ourselves. But jokes aside, he was very solid. He won a lot of his individual duels today, 5 ground duels, 5 aerial duels, won them all. I think that's the thing that we've often complained about Luke Thomas is that he gets bullied a lot. And I think that's the reason they brought Christensen in, because when he was in the first team under Brendan, all the teams were identifying him as a weakness you could get at. This is League Two, of course. You haven't got players that are as fast. You might have physical players for sure. Something to kind of think about. Slayer thinks if he has the minutes and the guidance, he could have strong contention with Christensen. I got to be honest with you, I'm not a believer in that. But what I would say is anyone can turn it around. And I still think for Thomas, what he really needs to do is find a team where he can just play the entire season as first choice left back. And I think last season, his move to both Sheffield United, that was a terrible move because he was staying in a competitive league in a team that wasn't very good. Then he went on loan to Middlesbrough. He didn't really feature. And Middlesbrough were a team that were in a bit of transition. They got beat 5-0 today, by the way, in the Championship. They'd sold all their players, which is a bit of a surprise. Have you seen the Championship this season, Neil? It's bonkers. Absolutely bonkers. It's literally just random in terms of what's going on. We'll talk about that another time. But yes, I feel he needs that before he's Premier League ready. What do you think? Others, I'll move on.
Yeah, I guess you're right, but again, the difference between him and Christensen is quite night and day. From the physicality perspective, from how we're playing. Yeah, I still think he's going to get loaned out, in my opinion. This is a game to kind of put him in the shop window.
Yeah, I'm not surprised that maybe Tranmere will take him. Yeah, this is true as well. Whatever you say about Luke Thomas, he'll always be someone who started and won an FA Cup at 19 years old. Absolutely. And you'll never sing that. I know I won't, that's for sure.
I think he won the ball. I think he might have got the assist for the goal as well. It came off Perez, but it went over to Luke Thomas, who gave the assist for Tielemans to score.
Yeah, he did. There you go. I still think left back is a weak position for us in Cooper's system, especially Ricky P and Justin being right back. I struggle other to see Christian and Thomas any more left backs. I'd agree with you there. I would say one thing he could do in Cooper's system is that instead of asking Christensen to bomb forward, he could ask Ricardo instead. That means that Fatawu might get sacrificed. Something to think about. But anyway, let's move on. So yeah, I want to talk about this guy. You know me, I'm a big fan of him. I used to not be, but it took all of about 25 minutes, I think, seeing Harry Winks playing pre-season last year to think I might have completely and utterly got my opinion on this player wrong. And I've since become a big fanboy. What did you make of good old Harry?
Harry was... It's all the... Without repeating myself, it's all the praise that we gave him last year, isn't it? Pretty much without... We've all been accustomed to what Harry Winks will deliver. And in this game, he delivered some and then some. I think the interesting part is how he linked up with Skipp, because I think that's something to mention. In terms of what he performs, I think, listen, Harry Winks will give you, I don't know his pass percentage, he'll give you a 90 plus pass percentage, he'll give you good, he'll be everywhere, he'll link up play, he was spraying the ball really nicely to left and right wing, controlling the game. And I think this kind of game, in this kind of possession, is where you see the best Harry Winks.
Absolutely. We had 94% passing accuracy, 1 goal, 1 assist. Very solid night's work. Something you'd expect. And someone mentioned it earlier. I need to bring it up. But yeah, we're talking about his fitness, which I agree is something that I think is underrated, because I was a little surprised he played the entire 90 minutes, given the fact that he's arguably, our most important player. And that said, I don't think he'll be any problems whatsoever to play against Villa on a weekend. So much love, Harry Winks. Okay, and we can quickly talk about maybe some of the subs that came on. I haven't got their pictures here, but we had a few to choose from. We had Will Alves. We had Chris Popov making his Leicester City debut. We had Hamza Chowdhury. There were a few others, but I think they were the ones that played the most amount of minutes. We had Connor Cody coming as well. Anything to say about any of the substitutes?
I want to mention Chowdhury. I think Chowdhury was, I think someone was mentioning it from the first comments that's on the channel. He was brilliant. When he came on, I genuinely think that's the best performance I've seen in a while for him. He was playing higher up in the 8 in Wolford and Diddy's position. And it was, Skipp came on. But he's spraying balls out wide. He was aggressive in the challenge. He was, and at one time, he played the Wolford and Diddy role that he used to play with Fatal, running right to the side and putting a cross in. Yes, the cross wasn't very good, but I want to give him credit, because I really enjoyed Proud's performance today, and it's why I rate him as a player. He works in certain formations and certain systems, but I think when he came on, I think it had a real impact on the game.
He had 3 key passes, which is more than Skipp and Winks put together, believe it or not, even though Winks got an assist. So that is pretty impressive, given he was only on for 27 minutes. Some other interesting comments here. We've got Alves looks good. I'll talk about a bit. I agree. I think he had a nice couple of dribbles, some good touches, some nice interchange with some of the other players like Mavididi and Popov. Didn't quite get something to go his way, but still an encouraging display. I would still be a bit surprised if he's still here come the window, but you never know. Here we go. I definitely agree with this statement. Neil is Hamza's agent.
You don't rate
That's why he got such a good deal.
Do you rate him or no?
Me, I think he's good. I do agree.
In this game, this performance, I'm not saying overall, just in this performance.
Yeah, he was good in his performance. It's easy when you come into a game when you're 3-0 up, I would say, or 2-0 up, I think it was at the time. Other clubs may have CDM problems, but I can confidently say this club ain't one of them. That's for sure. I do wonder with him what he thinks of his own role at the club, because the thing is, especially with Skipp coming in, how many minutes you're going to get. You're going to be the substitute squad player. He might be happy with that, but I think some people will, just want to play every week. But then he had that going to Watford and it didn't work out too well. So difficult to say. I want to go for one thing. So I want to talk about someone making his debut today, which is Chris Popov. And I love this comment. Popov needs to stop worrying about his hair. What did you make of him? He played up front for Jordan Ayew. He's only involved in the game for 17 minutes, but he almost scored, actually. He actually had here one big chance missed. Bit unfortunate. It was sort of behind him and he was scrambling, but he could have scored there.
Yeah, that was Casey McAteer with good pressing, good closing down, and then good trickery to get the ball away. Just wasn't in. So even before Chris Popov, I've heard a little bit from the under-23s and the under-18s that, again, he's a player that they've likened him to a young Jamie Vardy, closing down player. I've never actually seen him play, to be honest with you. And I've got a friend, a Swansea fan, who's from Wales, Welsh fan who watches a lot, and he was telling me about Popov and what hopes they've got for the team, for the Welsh team, which is really interesting because they were tracking him since they were 16, 17 years old. There's a good player in there. You can definitely tell. It's, again, you've seen the Jamie Vardy, he's running after everything. He's popping up left, he's popping up right. And I think there's definitely a good player in there. I think he scored in his first under-23s game, recent, or under-21s game. But I
was going to say, Neil, no pressure. He's the next Jamie Vardy. You've heard that on the show first.
Like a young Jamie Vardy where he run after everything.
Yeah,
and
he did
close
do that
everybody
today.
down.
Yeah, he
And
did do
that's
that
what I
today.
meant. Not that he's going to get 11 goals in a row. This was this was last year when I went to see him, and he goes, yeah, they've got some high hopes for Popov. No, it was actually a couple of years ago, but they were
You know
saying we've
what?
got high hopes for him for the Welsh team. So let's see how it goes. What about you?
I have no idea on him whatsoever. It's my first time seeing him. Let's see what kind of. Oh, I didn't know this. Ex-Man United, apparently. Yeah, I have no idea. I think let's get excited, see what he can do.
But in
I
terms of
agree. I think of
performance,
yeah. I mean, he didn't. He missed his opportunity. That was a bit unfortunate. If he could have somehow sorted his feet, but he was doing some good pressing. I give him some respect. There's not enough time for me to judge a player. I think that's just totally and utterly unfair after 17 minutes to kind of do that. Just before we move on to talking about the new man whose signing has seemingly been confirmed, I think this is a good question that's come up. What is Cooper's style of play? Not quite position, not quite counter. What is it? So I think that's a really interesting comment because that is, like, I guess, like a fair criticism. Although I would say that the thing with the way that Leicester are playing is it definitely depends on your opposition, right? So last season we had 70% possession against most teams like we did tonight. And that's because we were playing inferior opponents. When you play teams that have better players than you, and I liken back to Spurs in the first game of the season. Spurs, their best player for them on that day was a guy called James Maddison. Might have heard of him because he used to be our best player. So they signed him, and James Maddison isn't even the most expensive Spurs player. They paid 70 million for Richarlison, who wasn't even starting. He was on the bench. And then Dominic Solanke, was 60 million. So I think when you're playing teams that are better than you, even if you want to have possession, it doesn't mean that you'll get it. And I have said a few times on this channel that I feel last season when we played Southampton, I felt that was going to be the blueprint for if we would survive in the Premier League. So against Southampton, they were the only team in both games that had more possession than us. Yeah, the first game they played us, they lost 4-1. And the second game they played us, they lost 5-0. And it's because, and this is what I think to answer the question, what Cooper's style of play is he is still looking for fast transitions on the ground via short passing and interchange of movement. He's definitely changed one big thing, which he's introduced the left back into the team instead of having this kind of inverted fullback, and the left back pushes forward. So that's very much like Leif Davis. But there we go. By the way, I just want to bring this comment out. It's absolutely hilarious. From Tyler. Neil compares Mavropanos to Doku. Cricket. Neil compares Popov to Vardy. Whoa there. I love it when I get put on blast like
we're
that.
not.
But go
Yeah,
back to you.
I think people take it literally, and I think in this case it's just a similar ilk of player. Not to say that again they're going to achieve the level that Doku is, or achieve the level of Vardy is. It's just a similar ilk of player. Maybe it's the same thing, when somebody gets labelled the ex Messi, and it's like from whatever club, and it's obviously they're not trying to say that they're going to be Messi level, but it's just saying it's a similar kind of player.
Thank you. I'm just going to bring up Luke's message because he's my partner in crime on this channel sometimes. Please like the video and subscribe. I'll mention that again. But just before we move on to our new
And
signing.
to Luke's channel as well, by the way.
Absolutely. All the content creators, they all deserve it. But you tell me, Neil, what do you make of Cooper's style of play? I think that is a really good question.
There isn't really a style of play. It depends on the opponent. So with Enzo, it was very fixed. Ranieri was very fixed. It's a lot more fluid. He works with what he's got. And I think now you're starting to see players like Skipp come into the team. You see, where Ayew? Right, he fits. You can understand where these players, he's got an idea, but we can't have the full style of play until the window is closed because he's constantly adding players to it. We've got a thin squad. By the end of the window, we will be able to see. Just look at the formations that he played in pre-season. Different formations, different players, different positions. We started to see a 4-3-3 coming out, but again, even this 4-3-3, as you mentioned, was more like a 2, and then one fullback slightly forward, one fullback very forward. So it's not as simple as a formation or a specific system, but what does he want us to do? He wants us to press, and I think that will get better. He wants to be physical, and he wants us to win the ball back. And there needs to be sometimes a one-touch passing in the midfield, because sometimes that it's against Spurs, there's some beautiful passages of play. So I think that's a theme that's going to be throughout. So win the ball, not in a high press, but winning it turning over possession and passing it until we're getting in a good position to score a goal.
I feel like a proud dad right now that like my apprentice has taken on my tactical learning and explained it better than I have. Absolutely brilliant. And just to answer this question from Richard, I don't like Cooper's in-game tactics. 3 centre-backs for 2 centre-backs. What's that all about? Well, why don't you answer that for me, Neil? You've just kind of answered it there already.
Long story short, one tucks, one goes.
Yeah. Basically, in this game, I mean, it's smart. You know, if you know that you're going to be way better, then you don't need to have as many defenders back. And actually, this is a good comment as well. That match against Bournemouth was my view of how we win in the Premier League. I agree with you, Tyler, as well. Of course, we haven't won in the Premier League yet. Hopefully, we can correct that this weekend, although it's going to be a tough game because we do need to pick up points. But all right, let's just kind of wrap up today's show with something that I actually suspect a lot of people have secretly come on the show for. Because everyone loves a shiny new toy. And it looks like we are about to get another shiny new toy. And we have just, apparently, according to many of the Twitterati out there, have signed Bilal El Kanous. Who is this guy? He is a Belgian-Moroccan midfielder. Morocco is who he plays for. We're signing him from Genk. And Genk is Wolford and Ndidi's old team. And we actually paid a fairly big amount of money to them to sign him a few seasons ago too.
About the same amount as well.
I believe so. Although I have heard that this is apparently the second biggest sale in Belgium if it goes through. Although I think at current prices, it's not really a surprise. So done a bit of research here. We obviously can't show videos on the live stream. But this guy, just so you know, he is the current reigning Belgian young player of the season. And Lox and I did a quick transfer video just before the game started. And some previous winners of that award include someone called Yuri Tillemans, might have heard of him. Axel Witsel, might have heard of him. Charles de Ketelaere, he was another one. And Leon Bailey. They didn't all work out. Another one was Wesley, who went to Aston Villa and stunk the place out. But in general, he's keeping some good company. In terms of what kind of player profile we're getting, very interesting player profile, I would say. And in fact, I'll show this next as well. I've also got him compared to Keane and Dewsbury Hall, but we'll come back to that in just a second. So what has he done in the Belgian league? Well, if you look at his kind of creativity, it's absolutely off the charts. Look how many progressive passes, his attempted passes, his shot creating actions, and look how many assists he gets. This guy, you know, he absolutely creates things for other people to put it in the back of the net. Do we have someone to put it in the back of the net? Well, that will have to kind of answer in another chapter. But for sure, you need to be able to create them. And that's very important. However, I think another thing that's going under the radar here is look how good he is on his tackling. Even his blocks and clearances is pretty good for someone who essentially looks more of a kind of playmaker. And again, look at these stats here where he ranks in terms of aerials 1. So it's a physical league, the Premier League. And this is someone that you think will be able to hold it up and do pretty good. So that's the type of player that we're signing. And it's kind of interesting because he's basically gone on strike to force the move through. And the last player that did that was Wesley Fofana. And whilst it was nice when he came into the team, it didn't work out so nicely when he wanted to leave the team. And I do suspect that the reason why he's probably in the team or wants to come to Leicester is he sees this as a shop window. Some other good comments here. Thank you guys for getting involved. Be good on a high press. I agree. That's what this kind of suggests. And I think that's probably how Genk play. A lot of the Belgian teams play that way themselves. And from Slayer, it's clear Cooper wants a 10 who can press and hold his own in duels and challenges. It's the same with Buonanotte. Totally agree. And I'll ask you about him in a second, Neil, but I've been extremely impressed with Buonanotte, given that he's just 19. And the thing that impressed me the most was how strong he is on the ball. Like, he receives it under pressure against people that are clearly bigger and stronger than him, but he doesn't lose the ball. And he manages to shift his way around. And, you know, my sort of criticism of Bobby Reid at the moment is I feel the move breaks down too much when it gets to him. This is something that Ayew Perez used to have for Leicester as well. Like, he did a lot of hard work defending, but the move broke down when it got to him. Whereas with Buonanotte, whenever the ball gets to him, he keeps it going until he gets gassed. So I've been extremely impressed. And I've got a feeling that Buonanotte and Bilal El Kanous, Beck, as I'm going to call him from now on, that those two are probably going to rotate in their kind of minutes. Buonanotte is the one that is ready right now because he's already played in the Premier League. But probably as the season goes by, I expect Beck to come in instead because we're going to be able to keep him. Although I don't know, if we did stay up and there was an opportunity to keep Buonanotte, I'm sure that that is a possibility. But yeah, what do you think?
Yeah, I think also, just by the way, you can star messages and come back to them. So something like that, you can just to let you know. So it might have an option for you. In terms of what, again, he looks like a really good player, and I'm with you. I think what might happen is that he comes into the team, Buonanotte comes out, and I think there's a chance that Brighton might go, do you know what? He'll be better off in our team. We'll bring him back in January.
Or
Because it is a potential start, but I'm really excited by the kid. I think he's what we've been looking for. And I think I really want to see how he works in tight spaces, because something like Maddison or Buonanotte, they're really good at that. When a couple of players are pressing on them, and as you mentioned before, to be able to keep possession and then kind of wiggle past. With him, with Mavididi either side, and then with Mavididi one side and Fatal with the other, that is a strong, and then hopefully a good striker if Jamie Vardy's not fit. That's a really strong team.
yeah, well, I just thought I'd bring this up because I think at the start of the window, the obvious question was, where is the Kiernan Dewsbury Hall replacement? And I couldn't believe it wasn't the first signing that we made. In fact, I was pretty angry when Aoli came in. Not anything against him, but I just thought, surely, if you're going to prioritize, why haven't you brought that position in? Especially seeing players like Gabriel Sara and then Albert Grumbach go, I couldn't believe that we hadn't tried to pick up either of them. But compared the radar charts between the two, they're pretty similar, I would say. KDH was absurd last season. I don't think people realize just how bonkers he was. But you can see that in terms of shot creation, passes attempting, assists, very similar. Same with progressive passes. So really good to see. And he's always like a mini Dewsbury Hall. Actually, much better on the tackling aspect as well, which is interesting, suggesting that he's got a better natural ability. That said, you can see that Kiernan Dewsbury Hall was just a great all-rounder. Even better than that, he was just an excellent player, clearly one of the best players in the championship. So he's going to be hard to replace. But I think for what we've got in terms of upward potential, he's got an absolute ton there. Of course, the proof is in the pudding. Can he settle in the league? Can he do it right away? We don't really know, but I am liking what I've seen here. Just want to bring up a few more comments here that I think are interesting.
Just one.
Yeah,
Progressive carries, is that dribbling?
yes, that is the. It's
That's
dribbling,
one
but it's
thing
not. Yeah,
that
it's not
mediation
beating a
was
man.
brilliant
It's taking the ball upfield. So
Yeah.
how can I describe this? You know, the best player I can think of. Actually, there's two players I can think of who are great at this. One was Yaya Toure, and the other was Moussa Dembele, who used to play for Spurs. Where he was
Yeah.
a central midfielder, but he'd receive the ball under Pochettino, and then he'd get fouled. But when he'd get fouled, he'd literally move the ball up 30 yards and meant that their entire team could shift up, and it was very useful for them. So I think that was pretty good. So yeah, I'm just going to go through a few more comments then that kind of all around the place, but very useful, I think, to go. One from Luke. Do you think in the 4-3-3 we could drop Skipp or Ndidi to play this lad and Facundo to favour more aggressive pressing 11 against lower end sides like Southampton? I think that's totally possible. I think, to be fair to both Steve Cooper and even, I dare say, the entire club, I think we're starting to build quite a good squad here. It does feel like there's multiple people for multiple positions. So if someone's out of form or having a bad game, you've got a replacement. You've got some versatile players who can play all over the place. Everyone's got high pressing statistics, which I think is good. So I think we could play that way. It'd be interesting to see that. What I would say is that Southampton, I don't know if you saw their game against Nottingham Forest, who sadly have started quite well. And I only say sadly because I think they're one of the teams who we thought might go down. And what happened is Southampton, I think, had like 75% possession, but they only had 4 shots, whereas Nottingham Forest had something like 24 shots. They just completely played on the counter and beat them. And that's how we played against them last season. It's like Russell Martin doesn't change his style of play. So do we need to press them? I would just say we just need to make sure we've got a threat on the break. But I think it's a very good question. And I would say we could play that style against other teams. It doesn't necessarily have to be Southampton. What do you think about that?
No, I'm with you. I'm just something I was thinking about just now as well. Could we play a box midfield with El Canus, Buonanotte, Jamie Vardy up top? You know, we played last season. You've got Winston and Diddy in behind, or Winston Skipp. Because that way, if we're chasing a game where we need a goal, you've got all the attacking threat with 3 in behind. And then you've got your 5 up top, which is your, say, Vardy in this case, Mavididi. Then you've got Fatal one side, El Canus on the other, and Buonanotte on the other.
Well, I think definitely if we're chasing the game, we're going to start taking off some of the CDMs and put more attacking players on. So I wouldn't be surprised if we end the game like that, but not necessarily sure we will start the game like that. But it remains to be seen. Another one that I want to bring up, which I think is a fair point, is that, okay, if we've signed this lad and he's a really good creative player, would they be it? Or will they try for a striker also? Jordan Ayew played up front today and he scored, but he has only scored, I think, 4 goals in the last 2 seasons in the Premier League. So what do you think? Do you think a striker's coming in, or do you think that's our budget blown on Bilal?
It's a really tough one. I think Tom Cannon is gone, and I don't know what he makes of Daka. And it's all dependent on what is Daka's role this season, because he didn't impress last season, let's be honest.
Mm-hmm.
I'm 50-50 on it. I've got a feeling that we're not going to go out and spend. If we need a striker, nobody's going to want to lose the striker this late in the window.
Yeah,
Without
although I like this from Tyler. I'll say it until it's spoken to in existence. Cannon and 5 million for Josh Sargent from Norwich. Josh Sargent, I got to give him his props. He presses like a maniac, and he's one of those that maybe he's quite similar to Ayew. He doesn't necessarily have the best technical quality, but he'll almost force it into the back of the net through sheer hard will. I think he'd actually be pretty good for a team like us. Whether or not Norwich would sign him, I don't know. Luke, just for the 500 millionth time, has said Daka should never be in a team ever again. Tell us how you really feel. Daka needs someone up front with him. Well, I suppose that the way that we play, two people press up there. Look, I would say that Daka was the one that started all of the preseason games, although it did appear that Vardy was injured. So I think he was absolutely being planned to do it. You know, he's hardworking, pressing and passes. Obviously, his finishing is there. I mean, for me, I would absolutely, if possible, sign a striker. But we talked about this just before the match. It's like, who is even out there that you could get that would genuinely make a big difference right now? And I couldn't think of anyone. I don't know if you've been following Nottingham Forest, but they are trying their hardest to sign a striker. They've had like 4 or 5 bids accepted, and then the players have turned them down. Like they were linked to the Mexican international Santiago Jimenez from Feyenoord. He looks wicked, but the bid was accepted and the player declined them. So what can you even do? And like, I hate to say it, oh God, this pains me to say this, but as of right now, Forest are more likely to stay up than we do, given that they're not going to have a points penalty. So if they can't get him, I don't see us getting a player like that. The one I could see happening is I could see Fofana, Datro Fofana, that is, join us on loan from Chelsea, or maybe even Armando Broja. But the problem is that both those teams are sort of saying that they'll only get rid of the player if it's an obligation to buy. And I wouldn't want to take them on an obligation because you just don't know. There you go. And do you know the one I'm a bit jealous of?
I want to say with quite a few players. There's quite a few, from what I've heard, quite a few Chelsea players that we're in talks with. But it is going to just be for a loan for now, without, again, as you're mentioning, they're trying to shift them off and with an obligation to buy. And it just doesn't look like it's happening because Leicester are like, well, we don't know what we're doing. And in that sense, we are holding out for a better opportunity.
Yeah, I like what Tyler says here. I wouldn't want to play for Forest either with how quickly they toss players away. Good on Santi. That's pretty good. Diego, welcome. Excited about Bilal. He's going to be expected to hit the ground running, and that could be bad. I agree with that, but I feel that because we've got Buonanotte, he doesn't need to do it immediately. And I think I've said this before. I think he might not even be properly used before Christmas. Diego again, yeah, Broja, Datro Fofana, etc., etc. I think the thing with Chelsea, and this is the funny thing of the transfer window, isn't it? Is that like when you get to deadline day, people go absolutely mental. And when you've got a team like Chelsea, they're going to have 10 players that are still on the books that are not going to get a game because of the squad. Whereas right now, they want to sell them for money. On the last day of the season, they'll be like, screw it. It's better for us to not have their wages than to force the deal through. And so that's why my prediction is I do think we'll still see one of those players, because if we could get them on loan, then it doesn't even really matter if they're complete dud, right? It's just, it gives you that extra rotation.
If you were in the squad and you got them and they're saying, look, you've got to pick one or the other, Broja or Fofana, who would you pick?
I would pick Fofana because he has the best ability in football, which is availability. And that's a bit of a dad joke for
Fair
you,
enough.
but I heard that from the James Lawrence Alcott channel, and I totally agree, which is that, do you remember how when Ricardo used to always get injured? And it
Yeah.
was like how we know he's the best player in the team, but if he played 2 games a season, he's not the best player in the team, is he?
Yeah.
It's much
Or like
better to
Company was another example. Great when he was on the pitch, but he was never on the pitch.
Yeah, exactly. I'd be cool with that. Trevor Fafana, he was a solid reason why Burnley wasn't completely awful in the last 4 months of the season. That's what I think, and I think a lot of people are a bit harsh on his goal record. But that said, I did have a look at some of his games, and I don't know, he still looks a bit raw to me. I dare say that he maybe could have done with a couple of months in the Championship before coming up to the Premier League. But I don't know, it might be a bit harsh. So, like I say, he's my prediction to come into the team. And one reason why is great pace and on the ball skills. There you go. And I just want to bring this up because I think this is a very interesting one as well. Diego, in my opinion, I want a fullback just because I don't trust the defense as much. The reason I want to bring this up is that we have also been linked with Kaminsky. However, the interesting thing about Kaminsky is that Alan Nixon, who this source is coming from, says that he thinks it's Thomas Kaminsky, who is the goalkeeper for Luton.
I saw that.
But why do we need another goalkeeper? So I'm actually convinced, and I'm just going to bring him up right now, that the player that we actually want, let me just get him very quickly.
Because I found out, I was looking at that going, yeah, we've not been linked to any keepers for a while. Johnson looks like he's on his way to, I think, Wolves.
Yeah. So the player that I think we're actually linked with is a Polish player. And I think that he is someone who could basically put us. Let me just bring this up on my screen right now. So this is Wolfsburg, and here he is, Jakub Kamiński. Okay. So Polish lad, he's only 22 years old. So there's your first hint that I think is perhaps a little bit more likely it could be him. And look at these stats: interceptions, tackles, clearances. So looking quite good here. And if I just bring up where he actually plays, you can see here's one that I did earlier. Classic. Just having a look at this. So this was their last game. Sadly, they lost this. But if we take a look at his position, they play a 3-4-3, and he's on the left-hand side of the 3-4-3. If you look at his average position, he's number 16. Look how far forward he gets. So, yes, Diego, that's who I thought it was. This is what I'm suspecting, because I just feel like 22 years old, upper potential, is flexible. He's actually also played as a winger and on both sides before. But the only downside is I believe he's more right-footed. I don't think he's a natural left-footer. But I wouldn't be surprised. And the thing that really makes me think that he would be wanted is that in Steve Cooper, from what I'm understanding so far, if there were 4 things that I think he would want in his left back, they would be tackles, there'd be interceptions, there'd be clearances, and most importantly, assists, which is maybe the thing that Christensen isn't providing. And this guy is really strong in all of those areas. Pretty good in aerials one there as well. So look, I don't know if that's true or not, but yeah, that would mean we'd have to offload Thomas most likely. I don't think I would cry too much, to be honest with you, if that was the case. I just don't think he's ready for the Premier League.
And I think with this as well, I think the reason why we're seeing so much activity in the last of the window, I think we had all our targets set up for Enzo. Everything was ready to go. He went to Chelsea and we just went, what now? So you look at someone like a Aoli, he would have fit in Enzo's system on the left-hand side. Makes perfect sense to me, in my opinion. Golding doesn't look like he's going to feature, but again, you can see he's one for the future, and it was kind of like a difference to FFP. Sure, so you see that. Now we're starting to see with the likes of Bilal as a player, Kaminsky, that makes sense. So maybe they've gone, right, we've spent all the time like getting all these new players. Now these are the players that are going to fit the system. And again, going forward with a player like that, he probably wouldn't have fit into an Enzo system at all. So we're getting players in that are actually going to play for the manager. Before it was kind of, yeah, he's on a free, we'll try and get him, or yeah, he'll be a good player, he'll fit our previous way of playing, we'll get him in.
I'd say something that's a bit interesting about Enzo is if you look at how Chelsea are playing, he's actually changed the system for them, which I didn't think he would do, but I found that quite interesting. But he has, but I mean, it's still early days. I would say this, though. I think that Do you know what? At the start of the season, I predicted us to finish 19. I was really depressed, to be honest with you, because especially we made no signings, lost our manager, lost our best player. The pre-season performances were awful. That Spurs second half made me excited. And now with a few more signings, this look, even today, it might only been 2-0, but sorry, a League Two team, but 4-0, of course, was a score. So you can't really take much more into it. But at least it shows you that there's something there. I feel like we have got a plan. So I still don't know where we'll finish. I think, to be honest with you, after the Villa game, because that will after be the transfer window, we'll have a better kind of say. And I think it's going to be, it's disappointing that Fulham, I know it sounds stupid that, let's say we only got 1 point out of Spurs and Fulham, but the 1 point was against Fulham, not Spurs. I think that would have been better for us because maybe we can bring Fulham down. My fear is that if the bottom three teams just keep losing games, there won't be a fourth team that you drag into the mix, right? As I said, both Forest and Brentford have started okay. What are your comments on that just before I wrap up the show? Because a rule of mine is I like to keep it to an hour. Don't want to bore the pants of people here. But what do you make of the season ahead now?
I'm just not sure. Let me see again. But I'm feeling a lot more confident now because we've got a style of play, because we understand what the manager's doing. That point deduction is going to hit, or the 2 even, it's going to be tough. But games like this, bringing it back to today, is reasons why we will become like a better team. So I still think, I thought we were going to get relegated at the beginning, when the window opened, when the first game hit. I think we'll get 17th now.
Wow. Okay, that is Neil complete. I like it. I'm liking this positivity. I'm still on the fence, but before I thought we had no hope. Whereas now, have you ever seen that? Was it Dumb and Dumber? It goes, "You're telling me there's a chance?" I didn't think there was a chance before, but now I do. But look, guys, thank you so much, and girls, for whoever's in the channel and who's watched. Just going to bring that up again. If you like the content, please like the video and subscribe. That's both to me and to Neil at Beyond the 90. We'll try our hardest. We'll do some post-match analysis. I will tell you that for this game, I won't, because I feel that this one, there wasn't so much to talk about despite it being 4-0. But we will look at the Villa game, both with the pre-match preview, that Luke doesn't know this, but he's been tasked to do that for us this week. And we'll also be looking at the post-match of them as well. I'm an extremely big fan of Unai Emery. I think he's a great manager. It'll be interesting to see what he can do. And yes, thank you so much. Please like and subscribe. Keep following us on Fox Sake and Beyond the 90. Otherwise, it's been an absolute pleasure to speak to you tonight. Thank you and God bless. And up the Leicester. Neil, any final words?
Subscribe to the channel.
Thank you. Take care, guys. Bye-bye.
See you later.